Here we are, ending up season 5 of If It Be Your Will podcast. We've had a great season. Started back in February, and we're July 7th today. I'm wishing you all a great festival season, and checking out some of the great artists that we've had on this show. There's some great records that will be released over the summer, and we'll catch up on all that come September, October. My final cast of season 5 is with the great Matt Gallaway, was a huge Saturnine fan back in the day in the 90s. And I had the opportunity to sit and chat with him about uh, how that played an influence on his life and also what it led to. It was such a great conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it as the final episode, and have a great summer, and we'll see you come fall.
If I told you that I loved you, I was younger than the years. They fell so hard when I see you in the morning. I wipe the tears out of my eyes. The wind is blowing like an outlaw. I could travel in a car if I hope to leave you now. It's a hope that won't go far, but we'll see what morning brings. When I wake up, I might listen to you sing. When I wake up, I might listen to you sing.
I'm reaching down to New York City, and I have the very famous Matt Gallaway, author, musician, coming to talk kind of a journey back in time, and then we're going to come dive into new world, because Matt didn't only start Saturnine back in the day, but has this project that he's been working on forever called Death Culture at Sea, which is really great stuff. I will share the playlist in my blog post when I put this cast out, but you'll notice on the blog I've just put an entry for Matt on there, and it brings you right to his playlist, so you can listen to every song before I actually publish this. Matt, thank you so much for hopping on here. It was kind of out of the blue. I'll tell you the story of why I reached out to you. I recently had on Super Double X-Man, Scott, and we started talking about you. And I remember also I had Ladybug Transistor on, and Gary started talking about you as well. And I was
great.
like, I love Saturn, like, because I know your relationship with Gary is very intimate with the music that you were creating back in the late 90s, mid 90s.
Definitely, yeah.
Outstanding producer, and he also was raving about Saturnine. Now, I know Saturnine has been shelved for a decade or so, maybe.
Yeah, I would say more like 2.
Right?
But it doesn't matter.
But I think it lives on, and I really love this. Matt, you've kind of evolved into author. You have a couple of books out.
Mhm.
So Matt, to kind of get us started, I want to go back in time, and I'd love to kind of get an idea of how did Saturnine come to be? What were the circumstances or the machinations that brought you guys together?
I was in law school at the time, and I sort of used law school as an excuse to move to New York City because I, wanted to move to New York City, and that was a good way to do it, which was probably not the best approach to going to law school. But I had a friend, I went to high school with this guy, Ed Beluyat, who is in Verses. I don't know if you probably know Verses. And we had we had been in touch and it seemed like he was doing really cool things, which, they were versus, were amazing. And so I moved to the city and I was in law school. And then I met Mike D'Onofrio, who's the bass player, was in one of my classes
Mm.
first year in law school, and he was wearing a fire hose t-shirt. And I was like, oh man, I got to talk to that guy. And we hit it off, and he came over to my house. Or my apartment in Brooklyn, where we had a basement. I specifically wanted to find an apartment with a basement. That was like my one my one thing I wanted. And we
Right.
found an apartment with a basement. And so Mike and I played.
Mm.
And then it just so happened that Jennifer came over. I was living, one of my roommates had gone to college with Jennifer, and she just came over and heard that we were playing in the basement or something, and we started talking, and she was very interested in playing music.
Mm.
And coincidentally, Jennifer and I grew up in the same town. We didn't know each other because
Oh
we
wow.
went away to school. But anyway,
Mm.
um, she started playing with us, and then the drummer was another friend of mine from college.
Mm.
So we started, playing shows around New York City, first at parties, and then we got a show at our first show was at Brownies, through
Mm.
the legendary booking agent at Brownies, Karen Edlitz, who was like a force of nature back then. She was always booking incredible shows and like basically terrorizing people into like into playing them. She would, like, I remember being on the phone, like I'd be on a long distance call or something to my mother or whatever, and the operator would come on and be like, emergency breakthrough from Karen. And Karen would be like, I have this incredible bill and I want you guys to play
Wow.
the slot. And so she was a little unconventional, but she did book incredible shows.
Wow. That's cool. And Matt, I mean, obviously you were doing music before you moved to New York City. Um, what, what was your push to want to get into music, writing, recording, touring? Where did that start inside you?
I think, going back to high school, I went to a very sort of arts oriented high school, and
Mm.
people were always doing a lot of artistic things,
Mm.
and I was part of that. That always appealed to me quite a bit. And then in college, I was in, kind of cover bands
Mm.
for a while, and that was fun, and I learned a lot, and but it wasn't quite the same thing. And then I'd say junior and senior year, I became friends with more the artier kids at my
Okay.
college, and they were listening to, Mudhoney and, a lot of the grunge bands. And
Mm-hmm.
then I heard
Mm.
Galaxy 500, and it totally blew my mind.
Oh, yeah. Do you
And
remember what first song you heard from Galaxy that was like, oh my God, like I gotta, I want to
well,
do this.
the first album I got was the third one.
Right.
This Is Our Music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And although actually that was when I was in college, I remember seeing the album and hearing it, but on Fire, but it didn't really
Mm.
hit me at that moment because it was just kind of in passing, and everyone was like, "Oh, what is this?"
Right.
Because we were like obsessed with the Pixies and Dinosaur Jr. and
Mm.
Husker Du and a lot, heavier stuff.
Sure.
And then I remember playing This Is Our Music and just like playing it over and over and over again.
Right.
And that was like during
Mm.
the phase where you couldn't get On Fire. And
Mm.
what was the first one? Today.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the miracle of when we played our first show at Brownies, Dean Wareham was actually in the audience
Wow.
with Terry Tolkien, who was the A&R guy.
Mm. Mm.
Because I forget, they were there to see another band basically, but they saw us. And of course, we met them, and we were just like, it was like
Yeah.
our dreams came true because he was a very nice guy and complimentary. And then he sent us copies of the first two albums,
Oh, wow.
and
That's amazing. So cool.
that was a huge thing. So to get back to your original question, when I moved to New York, I just after college, I was like, I want to do something more original.
Mm,
And it just seemed like, that was a time when a lot of people were oh, also I lived in DC before I
mm,
moved to New York City. And that was like the height of the Fugazi
right.
era for me. And
Mm,
like one of the most I loved Fugazi for their music, obviously, but I also love them for their community
mm,
outreach and how you would go to those shows and they would say, start your own band, start your own record label. And that just I thought was the most awesome thing.
right. Right. And when, like, when did you guys decide to move out of the basement? So you did your first show. Like, when did the first kind of record soundings, let's put together a record and see, like, how did that origin start?
Yeah, we played a few parties, and then I was actually living with a guy. One of my roommates had a little studio in the basement, so we were able to record a demo
Hmm,
tape of, I want to say, two or three songs. And that's when we started giving the demo out to, that's how I'm sure we got our first show at Brownies.
hmm,
And we had a lot of friends too, so it was easy to get another show at Brownies. I mean, we could have been, playing like garbage, I'm sure, because that sometimes happens with new bands, right?
sure.
They bring in the crowd, um,
Hmm,
and so that one thing led to another, and then we met Angela Strawn, who ran Dirt Records,
right.
and we loved Angela, and she also had a Galaxy 500 connection because her husband put out Galaxy 500's first record. I
Hmm,
forget what the name of the record label is right now, but she lived in this really cool loft in Chinatown, and she just seemed like a very cool person. So she put out a single, I believe, and then we put out a few other singles with some other people.
hmm,
And then we put out that EP, Auto Guider, and then,
right.
you know, things just sort of progressed from there.
Amazing. Amazing. And what were some of the moments of Saturnine that will always stick with you? Um, like, what are some of those key moments or tipping points that happened with Saturnine that, either propelled you in a direction or veered you off in that sense? Like, do you have some of those recollections, Matt?
I mean, in terms of just like good memories, I often think about like we played this show. I want to say it was probably like 1996 or 97 on the 4th of July.
Hmm,
It was like 110 degrees, and it was an outdoor show on the rooftop of Angela's apartment building in Chinatown.
hmm,
Um, and it was just like murderously hot. We had to carry up our amps, six lights, and the amps were like sinking into the tar of the rooftop. But then, the sun started to go down and we actually played. And, it was just such an amazing, like, New York City
hmm,
moment because the sun was going down
hmm,
and
hmm.
the breeze kind of picked up and there were a lot of people. And it just,
Wow.
playing over the rooftop of Chinatown
Hmm.
was sort of like our Beatles
Right.
moment out, even though it's nothing like the Beatles, but it just felt like an incredible thing.
Yeah.
And
Did
I
it feel too that what you guys were doing and performing and that the crowd was feeding off of that, is what, like,
oh,
there
definitely,
was this
yeah.
like two-way exchange between the crowd and the band?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happened enough. I mean, we did. I mean, we were never like big enough to like really pull in like huge crowds, but I mean, we did play enough shows like that where we had the experience of, really playing live and experiencing that magic
Okay.
from the perspective of a stage.
Right.
So that I think was, that's something I'll never forget and always kind of, think back fondly on.
Totally. Totally. And I read that Mid the Green Fields was your was destined to be your last record. Like was that a decision that the band had said that this will be the last thing that we
Well,
make together?
actually, Mid the Green Fields came out before American Kestrel. So American Kestrel, that was the last album we did with Jennifer. And
Mm,
then Jennifer was basically very busy with Ladybug Transistor.
right.
And so we decided to part ways
Mm,
for a while. And then then we recruited a keyboard player, this guy who was just a fan of the band, and we thought we'd kind of go in a different direction. Um, so we recorded an album. I forget what it's called. The Pleasure of Ruins.
right.
And then we recorded uh, that rock opera was the last thing we did.
Okay.
And those were both, I mean, The Pleasure of Ruins was amazing because we recorded it with Steve Albini,
Right.
Chicago, and we got to know him pretty well. Mike actually got to know him
Mm,
even better because he went on to play with the New Year, who recorded
right.
several records with Steve Albini.
Mm,
And that last record was very meaningful to me because I was a huge fan of the Cananes, and
mm,
um, I became friendly. They came over and lived in New York for a while, and I played a few shows with the Cananes.
mm,
And just to have Francis singing on that record was, that's another like kind of all-time highlight for me.
right.
And I was also getting very interested in opera myself, like real opera. So I was like,
Okay.
oh, maybe I can write like a rock opera,
Right.
which was a little
Right.
presumptuous, but whatever. It was fun.
Yeah. And what was the transition then from guitar to pen? Like was that a quick transition, or were you always kind of writing stories and had ideas to put out novels and stuff? Was that
I
always something that was percolating, or was there a quick shift of, okay, music I'm shelving and now I'm going to start to explore
I
being out
think
there?
what happened to me, like, I mean, basically the big theme in my life, artistically and personally and everything else, is just my trajectory from somebody who was in the closet to somebody who was out
Right.
and not in the closet. And I
Mm,
think when I was younger and in my 20s in Saturnine, I was struggling a lot with being gay and
mm,
being in the closet, and music seemed like a way to express that struggle.
mm,
And I was always like a big reader growing up, and I think once I took a break from music, I wanted to use, and I also came out of the closet, and
mhm,
I wanted to use writing as a means to explore what it meant for me to
mm,
be gay. And ultimately, um, I think that's sort of what I'm still interested in, is like
right.
thinking about, like, when I was younger, I thought being gay was more like just about like having sex with
Mm,
somebody. And now it's more like a whole framework through which I view just about everything, like art,
yeah.
relationships, society. It's taught me so much about how I see myself and also how I see society. And I think when I started writing, I was still kind of like feeling my way through that. And that's been
Mm,
sort of the journey of my writing,
right. Right.
my
And
in terms of prose.
when you were writing songs, did it come, like, did your acknowledgement of who you were start to come out in the lyrics that you were writing, like without perhaps you knowing? And I guess I'm trying to ask, like, if you look back on the lyrics of those early 20s that you were, can you see remnants of these are
Oh
these are
yeah.
the moments I was trying to come to terms, come out to, figure
Yeah,
out
I
who I
mean,
was.
definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
they can be hard to listen to for me,
Mhm. Mhm.
because a lot of like, especially I would say Mid the Green Fields in particular is like I feel like I listen to that record and I'm just like, this is about wanting to kill myself.
Right.
Like the whole the whole record, start to finish.
I don't mean
Um,
to laugh, but
no, no, no.
yes, no, I mean,
I'm laughing too.
right, right.
And that was, I mean, it was very traumatic.
Mm,
And I think about it a lot in terms of, I think these days we're so accustomed to having like awesome artists who are out and they're gay and I was just
right.
watching like a concert clip of Perfume Genius the other day, and I'm like, this guy's so amazing. I love him.
Yeah.
Um, but there was nothing like him in the early 90s. It
Right,
just didn't exist.
right.
And culturally, there was so much shame around
Mm,
being gay. And I also grew up in a way that most people assumed that I wasn't gay because I was good at sports. Basically, it's what it boiled down to, these horrible stereotypes.
right. Wow. Wow.
So
Mm.
yeah, when I go back and listen, I'm just like, oh my God, what a tortured soul.
Right. I
It's
mean, I
like,
imagine though that that kind of stuff helps to situate yourself in the sense that, I mean, many artists like I talk to, and I'm sure you would agree with this, that it's that process of kind of dealing with your internal emotions and figure out who you are and getting it out of you. And music is that vehicle. Um, has has that vehicle always were you able to transfer that over to your writing as well as an author as well of just dealing with who you are in the world and
oh
our
yeah.
environment around us and the circumstances?
Yeah. I mean, I think like writing is I think it's more explicit. Let me
Mm,
put it that way. Like
mm,
one of the great things about music, I think it's more impressionistic. Like
mm,
you can write a chord progression and you feel what it is meant to convey, perhaps, but it so much is open to interpretation. And although that's true with writing, obviously, I think it's less true because you're saying words, and in
mm.
theory, we all have a understanding of what each word means.
Right, right. Interesting. And so you've been writing books now for, I mean, your first book was the Metropolis Case,
That's
uh,
correct. Yes.
and then you had one that just came out called Gods,
Yeah.
hashtag Gods.
Hashtag gods. Yeah.
And are those your two books that you've put out, Matt?
Yeah, those are the two novels, and I tend to be a pretty slow writer, so fingers crossed there will be another one at some
Right,
point, not too distant future.
right. I heard that you like writing in airports. That's your.
I do like writing in airports. I'll write anywhere. I mean, some people, I'm always kind of laughing because people will be like, "Oh, I had to go to a writing retreat
Right.
and, spend 6 months in the mountains just to be able to write something." And I felt like I never had that luxury.
Mm.
And I mean, I wouldn't mind doing that, but there's like jobs and the rest of life.
Totally,
I could
totally.
never quite finesse
Right,
that kind of mode of writing. So yeah, I'm good at writing pretty much anywhere.
right. And prolific, I would say. And I just wanted to touch on too, I mean, your latest kind of musical outlet. You put a ton out on your YouTube channel. Are these songs like, can you talk to us a little bit about what your purpose is with Death Culture at Sea? Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had sort of started recording a little bit in the early 2010s and with like GarageBand or whatever, just because it was, I thought it was fun
mhm,
to keep my fingers in it. But then I sort of took a few years off and I wasn't really thinking about it too much. But when the
Mm.
pandemic started, I was like, I want to learn like a real recording, online
Right.
studio. So that's what I did. And it's been great because I feel like it's given me a more sophisticated understanding of the recording process. And, I'm having fun writing the songs. And what's nice about a song to me, as opposed to a novel, is like a song takes me a few weeks, from start
Right.
to finish. And then what I've done is, we did last summer, I got together in Vermont with Mike D'Onofrio and Matt Cadane, who
Mm.
is, of Bedhead and New Year fame. And he's an unbelievably good drummer. And so he played drums and Mike played bass and I did the guitar parts and the singing.
Mm.
And that was like so much fun just to like go into a studio for
Yeah.
a few days and record a few songs.
Uh,
We're going to do it again this summer, which is
cool.
also exciting.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Is there a potential of these sessions amalgamating into something that you might share with the world?
Well, I mean, they're on YouTube. I don't put out music these days with any expectation
Okay.
that there will be a record or anything like that. But I
Mm.
mean, if somebody came to me and they were like, "Oh, I want to put out a record," I'm sure that we meaning me, I'd be happy to talk to them, but that's not really what it's about for me. I
Yeah.
just love creating the songs, putting them out there, and it is nice because I mean, one of the things you asked about, I think, in your question, you had a question about like connecting with people. I
Hmm.
still do get random notes from people who talk about how they liked Saturnine and how Saturnine's music meant something to them, and or they're
Yes.
checking out Death Culture at Sea and they like that. So it's nice to have those conversations, because it just, even if it's on a very small scale, it just means that like the art is having like an impact in a small way. And that to me
Uh,
is enough. It just
mm.
it makes me feel good that I spent all of those years kind of learning to play music and learning about the craft and sort of like finding my way through the community.
Right.
It like I feel like I'm still part of it, even in a small way. So
Right.
that's a nice feeling.
I love that. I love that. Well, I mean, you have fans out there, that's for sure. I'm an avid fan of Saturnine,
Oh, I
and I'm
appreciate that.
really enjoying the Death Culture at Sea. Um, it there's some attachments to the Saturnine that I'm getting from it, but also these new avenues that you're opening up, and it's just so nice to hear you sing again.
Oh, thank you. I
I just
appreciate that.
I've always loved your voice, and the way you play guitar and the way you write songs and preparing for this, I mean, I pulled the whole catalog out, Matt. I'm
I
telling you,
love
and
that. Thank
it's
you so
just
much.
on replay. Um, I want to thank you for this. And something that you said really sticks with me, and it meant something a lot, saying that once you create these things, they're out there. The world has access to them, and they take them for what they want it,
Yeah.
and leave what they don't want. I mean, again, we don't control this as artists, but I love that your music will always be out there and that my kids will experience it. And actually, my son came over today and I was blaring American Kestrel because
Oh,
it's my
great.
favorite. And he's like, "Dad, have you played this for me before?" And I'm like, "Of course I have." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I really like this." So it has this universal attachment too to people that age doesn't really matter. Like it connects to people's heart and their soul and their feelings. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
just so
love that.
happy that you had those experiences and that you're continuing it.
Yeah.
I feel that we're grateful to have your art in the world, Matt. So I
I
want to thank you
appreciate
for
that.
that.
And what you're doing is equally important too. I mean, I'm a big fan. I mean, I'm a compulsive blogger
Right?
and I've been doing that for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So I appreciate what you're doing too. And I know it's a lot of work. So, thank you for reaching out.
Yeah. Well, it's been a real pleasure. And I mean, getting to meet some of my all-time fan artists is such a treat for me. And I'm glad I
Yeah,
have this platform also so that I can make your voices heard and memorialize, in a sense that
exactly. Yes.
maybe
Your
we'll listen to
document.
this 20 years from now and be like, oh, those some cool stories about Saturnine, like that maybe weren't out there, but now we can get them out there because they deserve being listened to. So,
Exactly. Yes. Well, thank you very much.
well, thank you, Matt, and all the best. And well, let's keep in touch because I think this can be a part 2 down the road somewhere.
I
I have
appreciate
so
that.
many
I'd
more
love that.
questions to chat
Yeah.
with you, but
Yeah.
it's been a real pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you.
Of